G'day battlers, and today we're going to be watching something very special because today we're going to be watching the grand finals from the Buenos Aires Special Championship. Now, for those that don't know, I was actually in Argentina for this tournament and we didn't have sort of supplied phones, we didn't have a broadcast, so we had to use our own phones. Now, obviously there's some downsides with that, especially for us Samsung users, but one of the benefits of using our own phones is that we have the footage. We can just take the footage straight from each other's phones, and so we can put on a video like we have here today. So obviously we're going to be watching the grand finals between Nesabethan and LNDsSRargef, but we actually have sort of a special bonus feature. We're going to be watching a few other battles as well, and so if you want to skip straight to the grand finals battles, there's going to be timestamps in the progress bar down below, but we're actually going to start off looking at some other hype matchups that specifically Nesabethan has sort of pointed out were definitely worth the watch. And so we're going to be actually starting off with Nesabethan versus LNDsSteinar, and then we're going to be watching Nesabethan versus LNDsRargef as well, and then we'll get into that grand finals. Again, if you want to skip around, progress bar down below or the description, the timestamps are in there as well if you want to go scrolling. But we'll start off with Steiner here. Now, we're not going to be going too in depth with the team matchups, especially for these Steiner and Rargef matchups. We're mostly just going to be getting into the battles and taking a look at it, but I do just want to highlight that Nesabethan's team is just ripped from Boom from a few regionals ago. He's running that Azumarill Ariados core, two Pokemon that were just at the very top of the Gdansk Regional Championship just the week before this event, where Nesabethan actually also played and did quite well. He's got the Shadow Quagsire, he's got the Malamar, the Dunsparce, and the Shadow Drapion as well. LNDsSteinar is running a very different team. He's only got one Pokemon the same, being that Dunsparce. Instead, he's running that Dugong. He's also running the Shadow Gator Clodsire core, which, you know, sort of comes in and out of fashion by the seams of things. And then he's running the Guzzlord, which is a very powerful Pokemon that people don't necessarily prepare for. It's actually a Pokemon that knocked me out of this tournament. And then he's also running that Superior, making things a little bit trickier for the Quagsire and the Azumarill. Jumping into game number one, we have the Azumarill lead into the Guzzlord. Obviously a very good lead, but straight away, Nesabethan makes a really heads-up play here. He instant swaps into the Ariados, recognizing that Steiner was going to instant swap into that Shadow Gator as a safe swap. Now, Feraligatr and Ariados get to their charge attacks at the exact same pacing, meaning that if Nesabethan waited even half a second, all of a sudden, Feraligatr would be able to get to its Hydro Cannons that much quicker, winning the matchup. And so by instant swapping, he doesn't give that advantage and is able to sort of win charge attack priority as well, knowing that he will be able to win this matchup against Feraligatr. But he throws the lunge here. Steiner actually swapping into the Guzzlord to catch a Trailblaze, I guess. Unfortunately for him, it was indeed the lunge, which means that Azumarill is now able to come in, soak the damage from the Guzzlord, and just bubble all the way down. He actually throws Brutal Swing, which makes me think that he doesn't have Sludge Bomb. Unfortunately, we don't have movesets. The Dracoviz sort of website hasn't been updated, but throws another Brutal Swing, and now the Guzzlord goes down, and in comes that Gator who had that energy from the Ariados matchup. Now, Hydro Cannon doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does mean that now Dunsparce is going to be able to come in and do quite a bit of damage to that Azumarill. You can sort of see that Nesabethan is holding on to that Drapion in the back. Drapion, not great into Dunsparce because you are weak to that Drill Run, so I think he's just going to do as much damage as possible with this Azumarill, and then potentially just use the pacing of Ariados plus Drapion to try and muscle the way through. Now, Dunsparce actually instant throws as well, wanting to keep as much health as possible on the Dunsparce, but at this point, Drapion comes in. You could try and catch a move, but I think he's actually oh my god, okay. If we're going to see the swap in of the Gator, this Aqua Tail is going to do a lot of damage, and then we can pretty much just Poison Sting all the way down, throw a charge move, and this Dunsparce will go down. And Nesabethan takes game number one against LNDsSteinar, which means we're going to go into game number two, where we do have the Ariados into Gator in the lead this time. So we're just starting off. Again, charge attack priority we know is going to go towards Ariados. Most Ariadoses beat most Shadow Gators, but a lot of people now bring attack-weighted Ariados specifically to win this charge attack priority as well. So we'll see how they play it out this time. Looks like Ariados are going to throw the Trailblaze again, and this time it's going to get caught on the Dunsparce. Feraligatr again holding onto a move in the back. Now, Nesabethan is going to make a play here where he throws the lunge, reducing the attack of the Dunsparce, and is now going to just swap into the Dunsparce to soak all of the energy. Steiner is sort of in a position here where there's not much he can do with this Dunsparce, so he just lets it go down. Is now going to swap back into that Gator, who again is holding on to a Hydro Cannon from that earlier matchup. Now the Drill Run does get a shield here, Feraligatr getting a lot of energy and is now going to start unleashing it into this Dunsparce, takes it down into the red, and is then going to throw this Hydro Cannon before Dunsparce can get a move, so really nice timing from Steiner. Nesabethan decides that he wants to get this drill run off though. He knows that Feraligatr is low enough that it will KO and decides that it's important, and it is actually Clodsire in the back, which means that Malamar is in quite a good position here because Malamar is actually going to just barely outpace Clodsire to 2 foul plays, or actually even if there was a little bit of delay with that swap, it does mean that charge attack priority is going to go to Malamar's favor, meaning that we're going to get the 2 foul plays off here. Actually, Clodsire does survive, but it's not going to be enough health because Malamar's going to go down, but we have a little bit of a Dunsparce and a little bit of an Ariados, and either one of these just, one fast move of damage, and down goes Steiner's Dunsparce. So that quick 2-0 against LNDsSteinar, one of the sort of best players in the tournament for sure, which means we're now going to go into another winners round, which I think was maybe top 8 at this point. Nesabethan is now up against LNDsRargef, who is running an almost identical team to Steiner with a Dugong, Gator, Guzzlord, Dunsparce superior. Instead, he's actually running the Shadow Skarmory instead of Clodsire. Now, Shadow Skarmory is another big read that I actually used in the Gdansk Regional Championship. I was there as well. If you didn't keep up with the Twitter, which again, a link is down in the description below, I suppose. But it's essentially just a big threat to the Ariados. It's like, well, do you really want to run Ariados and try and not get RPS'd? But, we'll jump into the battles and see what Nesabethan ends up doing up against this very similar team. So we have the superior lead. Obviously, Ariados is in a great spot there, and we see a quick swap into the Dunsparce. So we're going to see something very similar-ish to what we saw in the last one, where we see that lunge chip, but instead we actually get a swap into the Malamar. Now, Malamar can take a move from Dunsparce pretty easily. Drill Run doesn't do no much damage. We're actually going to take another move from the Dunsparce and just keep on surviving. Foul play is going to be enough to KO once all these Psywaves are added in as well, and you can see Nesabethan farming up a fair bit of extra energy just to be ready to go in the back lineup. So here comes the superior, and again, he's just throwing another foul play, just chipping down this superior. He will be able to get to a superpower if superior doesn't throw, and we see no move from the superior. So unfortunately for Harjef, that superior is getting really low, and so it's really going to come down to what Harjef is running in the back. Nesabethan decides to swap in that Ariados, probably in case there is, and actually most of the Pokemon in the back, it's actually going to be Skarmory in the back, whether it was Skarmory or Guzzlord or even Dugong. Ariados was going to be in taking a bit of damage, and so we get a lunge off and then swap into the Dunsparce. Now, I don't know how necessary that lunge was, because I think even Brave Bird does about 60% of Dunsparce's health. Potentially once you add in the Steel Wings, that actually would be enough to KO, so it really just secures the fact that Dunsparce is going to be in quite a strong position here. There's still 2 shields on both players' sides. So there's the first one. Here comes Superior and just gets full farm down as well. I think he recognizes that he sort of, Harjef is in a bit of a tough spot, needing to burn through 2 shields, because Skarmory does not do very well when shields are up, because it takes so long to get to its charge attacks. It takes like 20 turns to get to its first move. So Harjef loses the game number 1, and game number 2 does not get a good lead either. We have the Azumarill into the Skarmory. And again, Skarmory takes quite a while to get to its charge attacks, so most likely here, Harjef goes straight for the Brave Bird and then dips, because there's not much else that you're going to be able to do, and that is what Harjef does, swapping out into the Dunsparce. Again, a bit of a bulky soak, a sponge that can take that damage from the Azumarill, but this is something that we saw a lot back in the olden days with Lickitung matchups, where you could essentially guarantee that you would win the Lickitung mirror if you just throw a charge move from another Pokemon, chip, and then dip into your Dunsparce, so there's just no way for the opposing Dunsparce to catch up. So puts Nesabethan in a very strong position, and essentially this Dunsparce is just going to do what it can, but Nesabethan will be able to come out on top. But Harjef actually swaps into the Skarmory, catching the Rock Slide, and well, I say catching, it's sort of sacrificing the Skarmory in a way, because it is not doing very well. He actually burns the shield on the Skarmory. He wants to get this energy off, recognizing that it could be a Brave Bird, and it is. Azumarill does burn the shield there, and we're now going to get a full bubble down. This is not looking great for Harjef, but what is he going to bring out here? He's going to bring that Dunsparce back again, at trying to take the energy off of the Azumarill. Not much of a sponge here, more of a sacrifice again, but it is going to be the Feraligatr in the back, and there is still a shield in tow. So he burns that last shield. In comes the full health Drapion though, and now Harjef sort of needs to use his energy here. A Hydro Cannon is not enough to KO the Drapion, which means that Drapion will be able to get this crunch off. It's going to do a lot of damage to that Feraligatr. It's down into the red. Needs to throw the energy here, or else he was going to get Poison Sting down, but just as we saw earlier, Nesabethan is going to come in, do a fast move down, and down goes Harjef. Nesabethan getting a quick 4-0 against LNDsSteinar and Harjef, but that does mean that we're going to be jumping, and we're we're moving our camera around a little bit. Here we go. So these two battlers did actually play in the winners finals where Nesabethan was able to win 3-1, but Nesabethan sort of suggested that the grand finals were better battles to watch and sort of just, leaving the winners finals to the wayside. So that's what we're going to do here. Now we've got LNDsAureo's team over on the right hand side, who is running that same Azumarill Ariados core that Nesabethan is running. He's then also running Shadow Marowak and Galarian Moltres, two Pokemon that have a little bit of an ire around them about, accessibility issues, but very strong Pokemon, and Aureo is running both. And then also has that Clodsire Dugong, a combo that we also saw on LNDsSteiner's team. So this is the third of the LNDs troop that Nesabethan is sort of taking on in this tournament. He's taken 2 down, only has to take down 1 more to win the championship. And also, while there may not be prize money in special championship events, he will sort of secure the travel award as well for the European region. So we'll pick up a few $1,000s if he does get the win here. So we do have both perspectives as well. So shout out to LNDsAureo again for sort of shooting the battles through, as well as Nesabethan. And LNDsAureo actually does stream on Twitch as well. So I'm going to have links to everyone down in the description down below. So if you do want to sort of, I think it's helpful to follow these top battlers to try and, absorb some strategies going into these big level tournaments and even the Go Battle League as well. So let's just jump straight into game number 1. Look, to be honest, I'm not expecting much Galarian Moltres because there's definitely a few threats coming from Nesabethan, but let's jump into game number 1 and we have the Ariados mirror match. Now, the big important thing to know in this matchup is which Ariados is winning charge attack priority, because if you play it all the way to the end, that one will be able to win. So we see Nesabethan gets charge attack priority, which means that LNDsAureo is going to have to do something to weasel his way out of this matchup. And Nesabethan sort of hinted to me that he's got his own strategy that we actually see LNDsAureo deploy here, where after you get, lunge after lunge after lunge and your Ariados is really brought down, you actually swap into a Azumarill, catching a move. And so even if you throw the Trailblaze here, because this Ariados has been lunged all the way down, it doesn't actually do that much damage. And so Nesabethan sort of suggested that he would have been much better off not throwing the move, just keeping that energy for later when he wasn't debuffed, but ends up swapping into the Dunsparce to sponge this energy from the Azumarill, as we've seen so many times before. Now, Drill Run's going to be able to be tanked by that Azumarill as well. And so going to throw the player off here. I think Dunsparce is going to just barely survive. And so we actually see the Marowak come in, try and snipe down the Dunsparce. Dunsparce going to throw this Drill Run to chip down the Marowak a little bit. And Quagsire is going to be quite powerful here. The hope is just that the Marowak doesn't have too much of an energy advantage to overwhelm the Quagsire. Because on this straight lead matchup, Quagsire is able to just outpace to these Aqua Tails and put a lot of threat onto that Quagsire. Catches the move onto Ariados as well. So putting all of his chips onto the Quagsire. Quagsire will be able to get this Aqua Tail off to KO the Marowak, but as we was sort of seeing here, the health is draining on this Quagsire. The Mud Slaps are adding up. We have to use our last Protect Shield on the Quagsire, and actually Nesabethan just lets it go. I guess he sort of just recognizes that the game was lost, and so unfortunately does lose game 1 of the grand finals in that Ariados mirror match. So let's jump into game number 2. We have the positive lead here with the Ariados into the Azumarill. We see a quick swap into the Kanto Marowak, and now going to throw a Trailblaze to either chip or take 1 shield off of that Marowak before swapping into the Quagsire. So again, Quagsire sort of, if you just instant swap, is in a very strong position into that Marowak, but potentially was hoping that LNDsAureo would think that it was a lunge bait and let it go. Actually lets the Aqua Tail through and gets a Bone Club here. Quagsire will be able to hang on and will farm down the Marowak. And so now Azumarill sort of has an opportunity here to farm up a little bit of energy. Stone Edge, going to add up a little bit of damage, not a lot of damage. And so I think we're just going to see a slow bubble down of this Quagsire after getting another Aqua Tail off. So we can see LNDsAureo was mad tapping the Ariados, but then realized maybe there's a Dunsparce in the back. Maybe we don't want to instant swap into that guy. So instead stays in with the Azumarill, does an Ice Beam of damage, and now tries to catch a move into the Ariados. No such luck though. And so, this is a pretty bad spot for LNDsAureo. Dunsparce in a very strong position into the Ariados, and that Ariados in the back for Nesabethan, also holding onto energy, will be able to KO that Azumarill. So it's going to be a slow drawn out battle, but the lunge is coming through. Trying to take this Dunsparce out, but Dunsparce doesn't quite get a full farm down, ends up throwing the charge attack. Aureo letting it go, and actually, Azumarill is still holding onto a shield, but there's just a lot of energy on Nesabethan's side. Gets the shield with this Trailblaze, and then we'll just need to get to one last charge attack, and this is going to KO the Azumarill and tie the series up to 1-1 here. So, let's jump into game number 3 here. We have the positive lead here with the Ariados into the Azumarill. We see a quick swap into the Azumarill. And now going to throw a Trailblaze to either chip or take 1 shield off of that Marowak before swapping into the Quagsire. So again, Quagsire sort of, if you just instant swap, is in a very strong position into that Ariados. Now tries to catch a move into the Ariados. No such luck though. And so, maybe there's a Dunsparce in the back. Maybe we don't want to instant swap into that guy. So instead stays in with the Azumarill, does an Ice Beam of damage, and so I think we're just going to see a slow Before we get into game number 3, I want to flag something that we're about to see, because Nesabethan sort of flagged something very high level strategy that is really interesting to think about and something that you might want to consider in your own games, especially when playing top players. So in the winners finals, Nesabethan had a Quagsire in the lead, LNDsAureo had an Ariados. Obviously, pretty good matchup for the Ariados. What Nesabethan did was instantly throw an Aqua Tail. And usually he said, opponents don't shield it because they know it's not a Stone Edge of energy yet. So it's just an Aqua Tail, whatever. You take the Aqua Tail. But then Ariados is low enough that if you play out all the way to the 2 shields, both Pokemon burning both shields, you will be able to, generally Ariados is still going to win. But Ariados is going to be so low on health that it's not going to be able to use its boosts against anything. It's not going to be able to throw another charge move. You're going to be able to get a bit of farm on your own Pokemon. And this is how the winners final ended up playing out. So we're going to see in game 3 the same lead matchup, the Quagsire into Ariados, but LNDsAureo is going to make an adaptation. And so let's jump into the battles and sort of see how it goes. So Quagsire into Ariados, and rather than sort of just letting the Aqua Tail come through, LNDsAureo actually goes for charge attack priority, throwing the lunge to reduce the amount of damage that the Aqua Tail would do, keeping his Ariados healthier, knowing that he will be in a better spot in this matchup. So that's a really heads up play that would be easy to miss. And so Nesabethan actually instant swaps into the Dunsparce instead, and we see LNDsAureo swapping into the Kanto Marowak. So we'll see this play out. I mean, both Pokemon are going to do quite a bit of damage to each other, both soaking a lot of damage from each other. It's another bit of a drawn out one, but we see the Bone Club landing, the Draw Run landing. Marowak will be able to tank this one, and then will be able to sort of get to another move, threatening the KO against this Dunsparce. Actually throws on charge attack priority as well, and yeah, Nesabethan's Dunsparce is going to go down, and so in comes the Quagsire, who is going to have to take a Bone Club on the chin, but will then get a full Mud Shot down. Actually, no, Aureo is going to swap straight into the Ariados, trying to again not let Quagsire get too much of an energy advantage, and we see mad swaps here. Drapion now coming in to take the lunge. Now Drapion doesn't love eating lunges, but it can definitely tank one, but Nesabethan decides to keep this Drapion healthy because it is going to be quite helpful for him later on in the matchup. Aqua Tail takes down the Ariados, and now it is Clodsire coming in here, but this is a lot to deal with for Nesabethan because this Clodsire we don't have that much Pokemon to take out this Clodsire. You can see how much Aqua Tail is doing. It's not a ton, especially after we got hit with that lunge, and so now the Quagsire is coming in here, taking the Earthquake on the chin, but Drapion needs to get to 2 Aqua Tails, and Clodsire is almost at the Earthquake, and has a shield actually, so need another Aqua Tail. So yeah, unfortunately this is going to be GG's. LNDsAureo really, with that heads up sort of knowledge based on the winners finals, how to play the sort of a rematch of the Quag versus Ariados lead, and was really able to just push through the advantage. We're now at a position where LNDsAureo is 1 match away from resetting the bracket. This is a best of 5 series, I should have highlighted, and so it is first to 3, and LNDsAureo is now 2-1. So only needs that one more, and unfortunately we don't have his footage for this particular battle because the file just didn't work on my computer, but the rest of them do. So we have a Azumarill into the Marowak lead, and so we see the swap out into the Dugong, just as sort of another sponge, working very similar to the Dunsparce that Aureo does not have on his own team. So we're just going to sponge up all of this player F damage from the Azumarill and throw a bit of damage back. We've got a Drill Run here that isn't doing a lot of damage, but at least soaks some up. Now we're going to see the Dunsparce swap in here. Dunsparce obviously in a quite a strong position against the Dugong, but we are now going to be Icy Wind debuffed. Tried to catch a Rock Slide into the Marowak, so really nice play from Aureo, but Nesabethan does not fall for it. In comes the Marowak instead. These Drill Runs are going to be Icy Wind debuffed, so not the greatest position for Nesabethan to be in, but still in a position where I think, actually, maybe Marowak even survives 1 extra Drill Run, barely, but Nesabethan is going to let this go, recognizing that he wasn't in a great spot, and brings the Azumarill back, which means that he's going to put a lot of work into that Drapion on the back, so he really wants to try and get rid of that Marowak where he can, but it's an Azumarill in the back for LNDsAureo. Now, this is a tough spot to be in, because this Drapion, it's Aqua Tail, resisted by Azumarill. It's Crunch, resisted by Azumarill. It is really relying on that Poison Sting damage, and you need to have energy to sort of throw into the back as well. And Nesabethan sort of highlighted that he made a bit of a misplay in this matchup because he's throwing this energy straight away, whereas he should have recognized that Switch Timers were desynced. So in comes the Marowak, doing a lot of Bone Club damage, really weakening down this Drapion. He gets his Aqua Tail off here, and he actually shields up. Switch Timer now finished for Nesabethan, so he's able to swap into the Azumarill, get the KO against this Marowak, but now the Dugong is able to come in, get this Azumarill KO'd with even an Icy Wind would be enough to KO the Azumarill here. And so now Drapion has to do a lot of work, and at this point he's going to shield up this charge attack, but he is just going to get fast moved down because that Marowak did far too much damage with those Mud Slaps. And so unfortunately Aqua Tail goes through, but the Dugong KOs the Drapion, which means we are now going to a bracket reset, one more best of 5 to determine who is the champion of the Sao Paulo of the Buenos Aires Special Championship. So from the top, it turns out that game 1 of this sort of round was actually a dispute, and so we've just sort of we're not going to show those battles. We're just going to jump straight into the sort of rematched game number 1 of the bracket reset, where Nesabethan said that he made an Azumarill he made a gamble of going for the Azumarill lead, and it did not pay off here. We have the Ariados sort of hard countering it, and so Nesabethan actually swaps into the hard counter Dunsparce for the Ariados, which means that he's going to be relying on the Azumarill and Drapion to take out that Ariados a little bit later. So we're going to see Marowak counter swap here. We see this again and again as well. They're just going to be throwing Bone Club and Drill Run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and we'll see who's able to sort of, muscle out of that scrum match. And so we see that Marowak again is actually able... That's not great. It's actually going to be able to Mud Slap all the way down, excuse me. And so Azumarill going to come in and soak this energy quite well, but it does mean that Ariados is going to come straight in, which means Nesabethan, knowing that Ariados is going to come in, instant swaps into the Drapion, recognizing that one of the powerful parts of Drapion is how quickly it is able to get to these charge attacks. But unfortunately for Nesabethan, there is an Azumarill in the back, which means that somehow, he needs to get back he wants this Azumarill against Azumarill, and he wants his Drapion against Ariados to at least try and do something. And unfortunately, that is not how the alignment has played out here, which means that this player going to come through, Azumarill going to swap in now. But I mean, LNDsAureo even has a shield advantage, and look, this Ariados is going to be looking incredibly difficult to defeat, especially with 2 shields in tow. Nesabethan tries to do anything to get a shield off of this Ariados by throwing that Ice Beam, but he doesn't even take it. He just goes like, no. I know that I'm going to need these shields later, and I'm going to win this matchup. So he's going to shield this second Ice Beam after throwing the Trailblaze to boost his own attack. Drapion comes in to throw this Aqua Tail. LNDsAureo is confidently able to shield up here, knowing that he will be able to outpace. He actually swaps into the Azumarill to get the KO on the Drapion, which is kind of crazy, but really heads up play because he still has the energy advantage here as well, which means that Aureo is taking game 1 of the Grand Finals reset. He is on a bit of a tear here. He has won 4 of the last 5 games, and so Nesabethan really needs to change something up if he does want to try and get the win here. And so try something different he is going to do, because for the first time, he's going to be running Malamar in the back. LNDsAureo not expecting it. So we have the Ariados into Marowak lead. Definitely a nice, a good lead because we get the super effective Trailblazers through, and now going to swap into that Malamar. And Aureo actually swaps into the Ariados, which is a bit of an interesting matchup. You are able to outpace to your lunges, but the Psy Waves are just adding up the entire time. And so the more shields that Malamar uses, the better this matchup is for Malamar. Because he swapped in and got a little bit of an energy advantage, he is able to throw another Foul Play to KO the Ariados as well. It keeps his shield in the back, and Dugong also not going to love a superpower from Malamar if it does come out in the late game. We see a swap out into Dunsparce, and even a harder lead, or even a harder winning matchup for Nesabethan. We see the Marowak swap in and throws the Drill Run. Aureo really feels like he has to shield here because that Dugong is not going to be able to do very much in the back. And so it's really just going to let this Dunsparce go and put all of his chips on that Malamar, who's going to be able to farm all the way down, throw a superpower into this Dugong. He actually has 2 superpowers backed up. So he's going to throw one, debuff his defense and attack, and then throw another one, and Dugong is just going to go down. And so unfortunately, because LNDs didn't have enough shields to sort of protect that Dugong, we now tie the reset into 1-1. And now we take another little bit of a pause because we're going to be, actually, no, we're not. So game number 3, we have a much better lead matchup with a Dunsparce, into the Ariados. And then we have the counter swaps into Marowak, and we have the hard Marowak check of Quagsire. Again, relying on that sort of pacing to get these Aqua Tails off faster to make sure that Marowak cannot get through. So there's the Aqua Tail. It doesn't quite take out Marowak, but it actually puts Nesabethan in a position where he's able to shield the Bone Club and farm farm down the rest of the Marowak, putting him at quite an energy advantage. But do note that he is down 2 shields, which is not a great place to be in, but we'll see how he does here because he throws the first Aqua Tail, it lands into Ariados, he gets the shield with the second Aqua Tail. He knows that as soon as this Quagsire goes down, he will just be able to bring in his Dunsparce, and so LNDsAureo throws the Trailblaze, takes out the Quagsire, and here comes Dunsparce. We see an instant swap into Clodsire, but this is not good for Aureo at all. Dunsparce is good into both of these Pokemon, and Azumarill isn't that bad either, to be honest, into this Clodsire, so it swaps into the Azumarill. This is actually a Stone Edge Earthquake Clodsire, so there is no Sludge Bomb to be found, and so Azumarill is just going to be able to come in here, soak all of that energy from the Clodsire. Interestingly, Aureo actually does shield here, sort of recognizing that at least his Clodsire has play into both remaining Pokemon, whereas Ariados is going to be tough up against that Dunsparce. So shields up the Clodsire, lets the Ariados go here, lets that Ice Beam come through. Clodsire comes back in, throws the Earthquake, but Nesabethan comes in to eat this Earthquake, can tank it really well, and then this Drill Run will be enough to KO the Clodsire, and then will quite swiftly be able to KO. Actually, the Ariados is already down. I forgot about that beat. The Ice Beam KO'd the Clodsire, but it is now 2-1 Nesabethan to LNDsAureo. If Nesabethan wins one more battle, he will be the Buenos Aires Special Championship champion. But I want to flag one more thing before we get into this battle, and that it is going to be, and I think this is important to sort of, as much as the spoiler, I think it's important to highlight, in that we're going to see another Quagsire versus Ariados lead. This is the third time they've played this out, and this is a really high key strategy thing here. So, the first time they played out in the winners finals, Nesabethan gets that Aqua Tail damage through, and they played it at the 2 shields, and Ariados just isn't able to do anything by the end of it against the next Pokemon. The second time they played out in the grand finals, LNDsAureo makes that heads up adaptation where he throws on Charge Attack priority and sort of throws the lunge, weakens the Aqua Tail so that it doesn't do as much damage. Now, Nesabethan's thought here, as we sort of go into this Quagsire versus Ariados matchup, is he expects LNDsAureo to throw on Charge Attack priority again. But what he's worried about is that, if he calls the lunge, then it's great, it's brilliant, it doesn't do a lot of damage, and he sort of keeps a shield and is still able to do a lot of work into the Ariados. If he gets the call wrong though, if LNDsAureo expects him to no shield, to call the lunge, and actually throws a Trailblaze, Quagsire will get KO'd, and it is almost going to be GG's on the spot for Nesabethan. So, recognizing this, he decides that he's going to do something slightly different. He's going to make what he considers to be a less risky play. So let's jump in and take a look at what he does. Quagsire into the Ariados, the third time they've played it out. If Nesabethan wins, he wins the entire thing. He swaps into Ariados to catch the move, and he actually correctly predicted that it was going to be a Trailblaze. So that puts him in such a strong position here, because now, again, winning Charge Attack priority, he knows that he's going to be in a position where he is going to be able to win this matchup if they do play it out to the end. So Aureo sort of needs to swap out at some point, or I guess he can just also he swaps into the Marowak, catches the lunge here, and which is like not that bad, to be honest, for the Ariados, but is now, because switch timer is up, he's able to swap back into the Quagsire, just do big Aqua Tail damage, take down the Marowak, which is just absolutely massive here. 2 shields still in play on both sides. The Ariados comes in with energy, throws a Trailblaze here, gets the shield out of Nesabethan, and now it is going to be a bit of a threat exercise where this Aqua Tail does get the shield out of Aureo, because it needs to, because he wants to get this Trailblaze off, but ends up swapping into the Azumarill. The Ariados comes back in from Nesabethan, throws the Trailblaze here, super effective damage, no lunges in sight. This Azumarill is going to go for a full bubble down, but recognizes that he can't quite do it, so needs to throw the Ice Beam, using a lot of energy from that Azumarill, which means that Dunsparce, this is going to be tough for LNDsAureo to come back from, because Dunsparce is such a good sponge, taking that first player off on the chin, and now has so much energy. Have to let Azumarill go here, because there is nothing it's going to be able to do here, and it's going to be down to Ariados versus Dunsparce. Doesn't even throw a Charge Attack, because he knows that Nesabethan has won this. Nesabethan takes the grand final reset 3-1 and becomes the Buenos Aires Special Championship champion, taking home the EU Travel Award as well, and just a really well played battles, and just a really fun sets to watch. So thanks again to Nesabethan for sending all of this footage through, and also to LNDsAureo, but not only for the high level gameplay play. And but I really appreciate Nesabethan's insights, especially in terms of the Quagsire versus Arido sort of mirror match. And I hope that it sort of enlightens something on your end in terms of, you know, how this high level strategy can sort of evolve as the game goes on. You don't always just learn one way to play a matchup and play it that way every time. You need to adapt based on your opponent's adaptations, and that's really, really special to see. And it was really great to sort of see these guys, spend some time with them as well. So with that said, again, links going to be down in the description for all of their Twitter accounts, their Twitches, all of the rest as well. So I really do recommend that you check these guys out because they are some really top battlers and are really lovely blokes as well. So with that said, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one. There's going to be more videos coming down the pipeline pretty soon, including my vlog from the Gdansk, Buenos Aires and LAIC trip that I did just embark on. So yeah, I think that's all there is to say, but congratulations again to Nesabethan and LNDsAureo for both doing incredibly well. And essentially, like, you know, Nesabethan is locked in for his Worlds qualification, but LNDsAureo is sitting on a lot of championship points now as well. So yeah, with that said, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.